Hello, I'm FX Toy Cat, and Minecraft Dungeons sure is a blast, right? I mean, I've defeated the game almost 3 times in a row now, and it's still so great every time I find a legendary with a unique effect, and because of this, and because of the great amount of fun that I've been having with the game, I figured it would be a good idea to share some of the important tips for this game, because there is a lot of stuff that is self-explanatory, and there's a lot of stuff you have to work out for yourself that will be a lot easier if you can work out ahead of time, perhaps by watching this video, which I hope you all enjoy, but let's dive straight into it. And let's start with the very first tip you need to know, which is that the power level of a piece of gear is not the end all be all of how good that piece of gear is. In a lot of other Diablo style games, you can just kind of like click on the thing that has the best stuff, and 95% of the time it will be better than your existing piece of gear. But the thing about Minecraft Dungeons that makes it so unique is that the enchantments and the special effects are a big part of the pie. So don't just look at the attack damage, look at the way the weapon actually performs. I mean, the gauntlets might be great, but they're literally fists. I mean, the daggers might be great, but they have the tiniest range. Look at the range of the weapon, look at the damage of the weapon, but way more importantly than either of those things, look at the enchantments the weapon either comes with, if it's a legendary, or can be upgraded with. I mean, it goes without saying that any weapon that has an enchantment built in is always going to be a huge benefit, but it's also worth mentioning that even if two pieces of gear are identical in every single way, the key difference between them that can really make a huge difference is going to be the enchantments. I mean, just to move into the second tip, which is the good enchantments you want. When it comes to a weapon, I've found that I love having leeching, the ability to recover some of my health every time I kill an enemy. That means that I don't have to heal as often, and I can go through things faster and with absorbing more damage. And I've also found that on ranged weapons, acceleration is insanely powerful, especially against bosses, because acceleration allows you to fire at some points 5 to 6 times faster than the weapon's default speed, because it does stack a lot. So finding the good enchantments that work for you and working out which pieces of gear have them and which ones don't is really important, because there is a huge difference between Smite, which does 20% damage against undead mobs, not so useful in the later stages of the game, versus the critical hit enchantment, which is a 10% chance of doing 3 times damage, or effectively 30% more damage per shot on average. I mean, obviously there's some randomness to that, but 30% more damage to everything is better than 20% damage to specific enemies, and the game is filled with lots of enchantment choices that are on that same level. Every enchantment slot only has 3 choices, but there are a lot of choices that can go across all the pieces of gear, and good enchantments will really make a big difference, especially as you go into the later game. So check your enchantments, check which ones are the best, and again, my pro tip for earlier on the game is leeching will really help, because again, a big percentage of that health will come straight back to you, and I find enchantments like rapid fire to be overwhelmingly unuseful, because it increases your attack speed just by a set amount, which you have a set number of arrows, and when you want to spam the arrows, you're better off using accelerate. So there's sorts of decisions like that you need to make for your enchantments that will hugely impact the decency of a bow versus another one, a piece of armor versus another one, and that's why you shouldn't upgrade automatically your armor, your weapon, or your bow, because all 3 of those things can be better when they're worse, unlike your artifacts, which, for the record, it just has to be mentioned, will always get better as they level. An 81 version of the same item is always better than an 80 version of that same item, and when it comes to picking your artifacts, since we're talking about them anyway, it can be really tempting to go with one that just deals some damage, the corrupted beacon, or the staff, or something that just deals direct damage onto enemies, but honestly, in my experience, these don't tend to work out the best. I mean, maybe as some part of a team, you can be like the specialist who does damage via these extra range magical attacks, but honestly, given the artifacts are always on a cooldown, they always have some form of special ability to them, it's worth using them to do niche extra tasks. So I love having one that is specifically there to increase my speed. I love having one that can heal me, because a health potion only regenerates every 60 seconds or so. Having some form of healing based item is always going to help you out, and then I like having something that can stun enemies, or can get rid of them, or can just kind of push them away from me, so that I can avoid near-death situations. If you have one combination of those 3 things, again, things that allow you to save your life or heal up a little bit in between combat, you should do pretty good. But again, when it comes to the artifacts, they are the most powerful parts of your build, but also they're the things you're going to be relying on only usually once every 30-ish seconds. There are a few that recharge every 5 seconds, but most of these have 25-second plus cooldowns, so just keep in mind you can't use them all the time. As cool as a iron golem sounds, spawning one in and when it dies you have to wait 25 seconds for another one is actually a pretty bad penalty, and it makes the cool sounding ones not as cool as you might assume on paper. Speaking of cool though, do you know what's really cool in Minecraft Dungeons? One of my favorite things is the little boss battles, the Enderman, the Evoker, the Skeleton Horseman. They're all taken from the main Minecraft game, and they're all kind of true to the fear of that, but in the dungeon crawler kind of aspect of it. However, all of these mini bosses seem super challenging, and if you're on a way harder difficulty than you're used to. They can be a genuine challenge, but the truth is you don't have to deal with them. In fact, the truth with every mob in the game, the truth with any encounter you run into, is you don't need to kill the mobs to get to the next scene. Obviously, it's usually the recommended way of doing things, because if you run into a lot of mobs, they're all going to attack you and you might just die. But if you really want to, you can actually get past entire levels without killing a single mob. In fact, here is a run on screen I'll show you right now. Based on the first level, I played at 1.8 times difficulty, so I'm not playing on just a level where they don't hurt me, but because I have 2 speed enchantments and my conversion enchantment, it basically means that I managed to go past the entire level and defeat it in less than 3.5 minutes. Again, some people take like half an hour plus to defeat a level. You can do it in 3.5 minutes if you just skip everything inside of it, and although skipping the whole level is a little bit extreme, if you run into an encounter that you don't want to deal with because it's you know, a lot of ranged enemies you hate, or it's just particularly annoying and you feel like it's hurting you a lot, just run straight past it, and that is the solution to a lot of your problems in this game. You can run past all of them because the game doesn't care if you kill the enemies. It only cares if you do the main objective and if you get to the end, and that can involve a lot of running if you want it to. Speaking of a lot of running, a lot of people assume that the only way to play through Minecraft Dungeons is to defeat every level once and then go straight to the end one, but the truth is, if you find you know, there's difficulties on the end level, and on the harder difficulties you definitely will. I mean, it took me like 3 or 4 or 5 attempts or something to defeat the last level on hard difficulty, or adventure mode as it's called in the game. The truth is you you know, in most games will instinctively rush towards the exit, but in Minecraft Dungeons you don't need to do precisely that. In Minecraft Dungeons you get a chest with a random piece of loot from the level at the end of every level, no matter how many times you complete it. In addition to that, you also get experience, which will level you up and give you higher pieces of gear that you can find, and basically these things combined, the higher you know, levels, the higher power armor for your equipment you can find, and the random piece of loot you'll find at the end of the level, not to mention within the level, means that rerunning these same levels over and over again is a great idea, not just for fun, not just for the runes and the other weird Easter eggs, but it's also a good idea because you get yourself a lot of loot, and every single level has certain pieces of loot that are exclusive to it. You can see it on the main menu screen, which gear drops you can only find in that level, and which artifacts are found specifically in that level. There are particular pieces of armor you can only find in some places, and yeah, it's worth potentially trying to find them all, just in case you find your favorite piece of gear somewhere in there. For instance, the Totem of Healing, which is an item I'm a big fan of, can only be found in the Fiery Forge and in the Soggy Swamp. Even in single player, the Totem of Healing is a great item. Being able to get that in multiplayer will help you out a lot too. So yeah, going to one of those 2 places, grinding till you get one, grinding till you get one you like, is a great idea. I really like the glaive, and it's worth running Soggy Swamp just to potentially get one of those as well. So yeah, if there's a particular weapon you really want or really like, but you want it in a higher level, then easy way is to pick the level and to grind it over and over, because every single time you play the same level, it will be slightly different. It's a fun little fact about the levels, in my opinion. Next up, this is a really simple one. I mean, I mentioned already how I think having a movement-based artifact is a good idea, but one of the movement-based artifacts you basically have equipped all the time is your dodge, and people do not use their dodges enough. When it comes to a creeper, attacking the creeper once, then dodging away, great idea. When there's a huge group of enemies that are about to converge in your position, dodging away and like properly getting out of there real fast is really important. Using your dodge in this game is crucial if you want to succeed, and although there are a few pieces of gear that limit how often you can dodge, there are actually enchantments you can make your dodge more powerful, but even without them, it's still a wildly useful thing to just get out of the phrase of combat, because if you have a ranged weapon, or even if you just have a weapon with a decent amount of reach, not being directly in the midst of 100 enemies or 10 enemies is usually a good idea. So make sure you use your dodge as often as you can. It's one of those things that's going to seem like it's no big deal, but again, diving in and out of combat really quickly is something you can only really do with the dodge. I really do think it's as powerful as having a 4th artifact all the time, and you know, like you know, one of the artifacts basically is just a second dodge, and yeah, dodge a lot and you'll be able to dodge the issue of dying a lot. And yeah, in general, I would say that the thing you gotta keep in mind is in this game you'll have a pretty chill play from the first run. You know, like getting used to all of the levels for the first time shouldn't be too amazingly challenging on that first go through, but it's the second playthrough and the third playthrough where you have to really keep in mind that enemies will scale faster than you do. So have your strategy in mind and be aware that in this game there is no penalty to respecking and trying a different class. If you want to go from being an entirely melee focused character to a range based one, if you want to focus more on your artifacts and having cooldown stuff for those, you actually basically can switch between tanking, being like a rogue, being like a ranger, being a artifact based character. You can do that with no penalty because your character has no inherent abilities. It's all down to your armor, your weapon, your etc. And if you find a really good piece of gear that only works for one playstyle, that isn't your current playstyle, be willing to switch to it, and also be willing to realize that, like, you're not playing through different weapons and stuff is how you find your favorite piece of gear. I didn't know how much I'd like a hammer till I found a lightning hammer that, you know, also had leeching on. It was amazing. I didn't know how much I'd like the glaive till I picked one up. I didn't know that I would be able to live with a claymore, you know, despite the fact that it's, you know, super slow attacking. But all of these weapons were ones that I learned that I like by picking them up. Don't be too picky about the particular one type of weapon that you're going to find, because you are going to find an amazing legendary of a type of weapon you're not familiar with, and it's always worth giving it a try, because some stats that sound super counterintuitive, like a crossbow that has 126 damage being better than one with 400 damage that explodes, because the 126 damage one gives you more arrows and fires 4 times faster, that's more DPS in the end. It's crazy that that's true, but it really can lead to some silly situations, because yeah, my final tip here is going to be, when you get to the end of a level, there's a boss fight, save your arrows if you can. If you have a decent crossbow, especially one with accelerate on it, like I mentioned earlier, you can kill most bosses in this game, even the hardest ones, just by spamming arrows at them the entire time. It's always funny to watch. It's always extra humorous just how fast they can go down and how fast you can fire arrows. And it's the last kind of tip I have right here to kind of help you out with the base game. A lot of the things you'll learn as you go along, and if you want to see some more advanced tips that we've picked up over the last 50 levels and as we go through the last playthrough, which we're going to be doing on stream in a couple of days, let me know in the comments down below, because I like Minecraft Dungeons. I don't think we'll be making a huge number of videos for this game, but if you want to see more, I'd love to hear about that, because this is a lot of fun for a dungeon crawler. Minecraft has done a great job with it, and I hope you'll enjoy this video as much as you're about to enjoy the game itself. Thank you for watching, like it if you liked it, share if you liked it, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.